So jump right in. Why did you start the Nero's journey? What was your story? Why did you actually start?
So my experience, and even though I didn't know it at the time for most of my life, was somebody that experienced a lot of childhood trauma. And I had sexual abuse, gun violence, domestic violence. And those things set my nervous system up in a certain way that I was on the addiction train early. First time I ever got blackout drunk, I was 5 years old. And concurrently, I also, as I became an adult, I oriented around business. And I'm not sure if you know this, but actually, childhood trauma is an indicator of business is success.
Hmm.
I have a friend who runs a private equity fund, and they do all kinds of data. What is the thing that could make this a successful investment? And the number one investment characteristic they found of somebody who is a successful investment for them is that they had an experience of childhood trauma, which really shocked me. It's probably not the best way to become a founder because of all the problems that happen with it. But I say that because I was trying to deal with my trauma my entire life, and I oriented in my adult life around success in business and finance, and I was blessed to have that success young and in my 20s. And as the ramifications of my history kept coming up, I got deeper and deeper into substance abuse, and I became a crack addict. And I had a marriage that dissolved, and I joined a men's group just out of, I wasn't the kind of person that thought I would join a men's group, but everything was falling apart, and I did. And I started to get some camaraderie with men. And I learned a lot about vulnerability there. It's the first time I ever cried in front of men. A lot of different things happened with that. And through my experiences about 5 years ago, I actually learned what trauma was and that I had it. And I decided to try to attack that problem in a similar way that I did with my businesses, like create a framework and some values around it. And I had really difficult somatic experiences for most of my life that I was medicating in some way. And over a 5 year period, things really changed. I haven't had a drink in almost 4 years. I found the love of my life. I lost a bunch of weight. Just all kinds of things were happening and going well. But I still had those sensations in my body. And at some level, I felt damaged. Like I came out of the factory with the settings wrong. And last year, concurrent to the time of scanning my brain, which was a really powerful moment for me, to see the function of my brain and see the trauma in it and how it could be resolved. I started doing neurofeedback, and I had an experience of just my nervous system calming down. And I felt just so blessed from that, that, it was the kind of thing that I didn't really think was accessible to me. And probably on a deeper level, I didn't think that I even deserved. And when it happened, my whole life changed. And one of the things that emerged was that I could actually have a purpose. I always envied people that had a purpose. I was just trying to deal with what was in front of me. And the purpose became, I believe that there's millions of people out there that have probably had experiences like mine, likely feel similarly in certain ways. And I was hopeful that my experience may be of benefit to them. I know just communicating it is benefit, and that I might be able at some point to kind of teach my approach to the way to work with this over the long term. And so I just started doing that. And I'm not sophisticated in these ways at all. I've never been a podcaster, all these things, but I learned to do it. And so now I have a podcast, and I'm writing a book, and hoping that I can be of service in some way.
Well, that's a really interesting origin story of how you got to this point, and glad that you are on the healing journey. It's like you told me before we jumped on. It's try different types of therapy. To me, I think therapy and healing is really the first book of like a 7 book series
Mm,
where when you start healing, you start to have a renegotiating with your past experiences, who you were, why were you stuck there for so long, what did it serve you, how does it look like actually having different relationships with people that you have known for quite some time, but they have known you as you, Steve, and how now they're renegotiating it. The other
mm,
part is taking away some of the crutches that have been helping lubricate or like to water down, say, the experiences so that they're not as intense. And I'm super glad that you are on this healing journey. So, for the listeners, what is neurofeedback?
So neurofeedback, I like to call it dog training for your brain, but essentially what it is you go in there initially and you do what's called a QEEG scan. And some brain scans are very expensive, like they're like five grand. That's not so much. It's $500. It's been around for decades. And what it does is it is reading your brainwave patterns with both your eyes open and closed. And at the end of that, the practitioner will analyze it and show you your maps of your brain. And essentially, the way they do it is they show you all the different brainwave types, alpha, theta, beta, and whatnot. And they have a green brain. And then if your brain is in the normal areas, the whole picture is green. But what happens with trauma is oftentimes your threat sensors in different areas get overactive. And so those show up as red. And then because you're not generating new power actually in your brain, when you're overactive one place, you're underactive someplace else, which is often your prefrontal cortex, the things that makes meaning out of these experiences, impulse control, which I had a lot of difficulty with when I was growing up. And what was amazing to me is when they gave me that scan, this person didn't know my history or anything about me really, and not my behavior patterns. And he laid out all the, you're probably like this, you're probably like, I thought this guy was living with me. But he was really able, and that moment was really important for me. It was saying, okay, like this is an injury. This is like how it was when I tore my knee up. A doctor saw it. And then he said, what we can do is try to move your brain in the direction of health. And what neurofeedback is and neurostimulation is, stimulation will stimulate the parts of your brain that are underactive so that they start to pick up. And then what I love about neurofeedback, you're not trying to do anything. Basically, he puts in a protocol. They're trying to move your brain slowly towards health. And literally, what I would do is watch surf videos. I like to surf on YouTube through this computer system with all the with the thing on my head that was reading my brainwaves. And when my brain was moving towards the direction of health, I could see the entire screen and I could hear it. And when I was getting into my older unhealthy patterns, the screen would sort of collapse, and then eventually it would become just one little circle, and I couldn't even hear it. And there was no effort involved. My brain liked the reward of the video, so it starts to figure out, oh, if we switch up this brainwave pattern, I'll get to see the video. And so you just do that over and over and over, and it's like operant conditioning, sort of like dog treats. And then after 10 sessions, you scan your brain again and you say, oh, we've made some progress here, blah, blah, blah. Set a new protocol and you do it again. And so, very powerful thing. I highly recommend it to anybody. And what was nice about it is it's a ratifying factor because sometimes you're getting healing and your behaviors are changing a little bit, but you might not exactly be convinced of it, right? But then if your doctor says, oh, well, look, we're moving in the direction of health. And you're like, whoa, I didn't blow up at my partner that time. Maybe I'm getting better. So it became this cycle. And I did it for 40 sessions. And now, if you look at those scans, they look like almost all green. My brain has moved into the brainwave patterns of a quote unquote normal person, and it doesn't exhibit the traumas that I had as a kid. And it's one of many things I do, but I think it's a great experience. And you don't have to talk about anything, which is really nice. If somebody is hesitant to go into the experience, none of that is needed. You can just basically, we're looking at your brain, we're trying to move it in a healthy direction. And and what it could do for people, and I know this because I've recommended it to a number of people, is it builds up some resilience in the brain, and then they feel more comfortable going into the actual experiences, which is still needed. It's, you're not solving your psychological issues by increasing the function of your brain. You're just giving yourself a better opportunity to have success.
So when you were talking about the operational conditioning and you're talking about dog treats,
Hmm.
Pavlov's dog or Pavlov's bell is what really comes to mind. And
Hmm.
what it's doing is if you start ringing the bell, you don't give the dog it, they'll still start salivating. So they're getting the result that they want because of the operant conditioning. The
Hmm.
other part to it was you were talking about the delaying instant gratification. When
Hmm.
you're able to get out of the limbic part of your brain, the fight, flight, fawn, or freeze response, you're able to then allow yourself to be able to not go off of your emotions that are in survival mode. And then when you're able to go into more of your logical part of your brain, you're able to then understand that this is what's happening. And you're able to, by the longer you can sit in there, the more conditioned you become to be able to understand what's going on. Why was I actually feeling like this? And you're able to challenge your old biases because this was scary at one point.
Hmm.
And then it becomes it's not scary. I was scared, but now this is comfortable. And then you increase the intensity because you're able to realize that the past was the past, which actually has the emotion inside the history. So totally agree with you. I think what you just named was such a great tool for people that are ambivalent about talking about things that are re-triggering.
Yeah, and I really appreciate all of the things you said. One of the things I want to clue into is what happens in the concurrence of the brain functioning better and all the other. I've done a lot of different therapies. Is I really feel at this point that I get to choose the man that I am.
Hmm.
And before, I just had to react to my own reactions that I felt were me, but really they were just my brain, which was actually doing a really good job given the circumstances that it was developing under. It was adapting me to deal with those circumstances. And I had a long experience of trying to be in therapy with my ex-wife and them asking me to do certain things. And I would say, I would really love, I mean, I want to say yes, but in the heat of the battle, I'm not sure that I can do that. And now, um, I very often can have that choice of action. And the other part of it is I also, because I've decided on what kind of man I want to be, my whole family knows my journey. When I fall down on that, I say, hey, last night that wasn't how I want to be. I'm sorry. And the sorry part linked to them knowing that I'm doing things has just made everything so much better with every relationship that I've had. And I don't know why, and I don't know if this was ever your experience, but I feel like saying sorry was almost like a threat to me in some way. And to be able to do it now and feel really like it aligns with me, it's not a threat, and to see the reactions that I get, it's really been a big change in my life.
So the question I have is that with this healing that you're speaking about, How does it feel to not just be an observer in your life, but to be an active participant on your decisions that you're making, the interactions and the relationships? And the follow-up part to it is when you actually stop being an observer and be an active role, how uneasy did it make you feel?
Yeah, I mean, it's been transformational, and I think that the healing that happened and what happened was the notion that those things weren't me, like ingrained just the way my genetics were. And so that's what I thought I was dealing with. And so it was disempowering, right? Because I wasn't, there was on some level, I thought I want to do these things and I don't want to get that disappointed look from you, my kid or my wife, and I just can't. And then over time, as I put it together and I started to gain some skills and things get better and better. And as you change your neural pathways, things get easier and easier. I did be able to become that active participant. And I did be able to choose who I wanted to be and how I wanted to be. And that's why I think that since then, as I've gotten a little further down the path, it's really aligned me with a purpose. And I've taken a lot of time to be like, well, who do I actually want to be? And then I know whether I'm living up to that or not. But the healing going for it, it's a process in my experience that you practice and you can get better at. And then once you get one time when you don't blow up at your kid or you don't do this, you don't do that, then you get that positive reinforcement and it just keeps on going. And when it's in conjunction, in my experience, with the people knowing that you're doing it, and knowing what my past was, and I'm open about it. People don't have to speak about it. That's my thing. But certainly in my family, when they knew the gravity of what I was dealing with, and they knew I was trying, and they knew that I was starting to show some betterness, but I wasn't always there. Um, I just got so much love and connection and completely different relationships. So, really, what you're talking about is um, that process allowed me to do everything that's important to me at the level at which what is related to me as a person and my purpose, and not some behavior patterns that I just don't feel like I have any control of. And that's what I so wish. I mean, I so wish that for people. And I've been around a lot of people with really heavy experiences, as I know you have. And I know that people can shift these things up no matter what's happened to them. And so that gives me a lot of hope.
I'm glad to hear that you have the hope. And honestly, the experiences, you said that people were able to come closer to you, be able to respect the fact of the change. Did you receive any type of bitterness, or why didn't you change sooner? Or did you have any of that negative blowback that you had to persevere through?
Well, I had that from some people, like definitely from some former wives and girlfriends, who were not in my life, and sort of where I tried to, just go back and say, look, I wish I would have handled that better, kind of thing. And they weren't able to see the whole thing. As far as my close people, um, and it's sort of a litmus test. I mean, at this point, if I can't tell you this about me and you can't sort of be aligned with it, then maybe I'm not the right person for you. And so I have certainly moved on from certain friends and whatnot that just had behavior patterns that I didn't want to be around. I didn't get any actual um, pushback, but yeah, and the other part of it is I really enjoy framing my life through the hero's journey lens. And so when I did that, that's a very powerful thing for me. And really what it was helpful with is the main person I didn't want to get the blowback from and the pushback is my own self. right? I had a lot of things that I did that I'm not proud of. And so, um, by looking at my life through this journey and saying, okay, this is my path, and part of that path is you're not going to have the experiences I had and the house that I lived in without going through some things. And that was then, and that's not who I am now. Who I am now is somebody that operates in a way that I can respect, and I am not going to continue to kind of shame myself or shit on myself, which a lot of men do for what they've done in the past. And so the main blowback that I was trying to avoid is my own self. And what happened by frame using the hero's journey was a really helpful mechanism for me to do that.
Well, the hero's journey actually allows yourself to be able to have that crucial character arc within yourself, to be able to not just look at it as failure, but look at it as opportunities of setbacks. How
Hmm.
did this resiliency make me stronger? How did it actually help me be able to become more navigatable through these circumstances, to be able to push through, to persevere? Like, there was something that you said before, which was when you got into the business, they said one of the best reasons for a person to be successful in that area was to have a trauma in childhood. And when I was thinking about that, they said, I'm trying to remember if it was Dr. Carol Dweck or Adam Grant. They said people that are born dyslexic and they're able to get through dyslexia, they're able to go so much further than other people that have not been severely stunted because they didn't have that whole character arc of building. Things were more on normal mode when people have to persevere through stuff. Like, so I guess my question to you would be is finding your hero arc, or what how do you like to deliver that message to other people to realize that this just might be a holding point for you to be able to become more successful?
Yeah, oftentimes as I've gotten further down this path, some things that I would have rejected earlier in my life, like the universe or God or source has a plan for me and all the things are happening for me. Now I believe that. So oftentimes, if I happen to be talking to somebody, which is often, and they have questions about it or they're somewhere in their journey, I often say this might be the moment where an ally has appeared. And that's part of the hero's journey. Once you accept the quest, that allies will come to help you. And what I think both of us are trying to do is be allies for people. And so what I like to do is just talk people through this whole arc, and that there are little mini heroes journey within, right? So you can use this framework to say, like, oh, I started a business when and that business didn't work, right? Like, but oh, I'm a failure or whatever. Like, no, that's part of my larger journey. And I had enough entrepreneurial desire to try to start, and I took risks and all these things. And what I learned was that wasn't the best move. I learned all these things, and that's part of my journey now. And so I really try to step out to people and then also tell them that my experience also is, and with many, many people that I've talked to, as they come to a certain point, they feel like their life experiences were there, not, they didn't happen to them, they happened for them. And one of the things that you brought up a little bit about the resilience, it's been studied with post-traumatic growth, that people who have actually had trauma, when they grow, they can have a higher ceiling than somebody who never had that. And it's been studied by many clinicians and universities. So you can look at it like the things that were maybe the most shameful thing or my wounds, if I can have the courage and the luck and the grace to kind of get through that, there's something on the other side of it for me that will not only make the whole journey worthwhile, it'll make it seem like there was a purpose to it. So now I think when we were talking before we came, I was telling you about some of my experiences, and I said I look at them as blessings now. They are the things that allow me to connect with a lot of people because, if you've witnessed a murder, I can be like, yeah, I know it exactly what that's like, and so it's really now those things are really parts of me that I respect most, that I like about myself most. And many of the things that I find most worthy in my own self are related to having difficult experiences and working through them to a point where now I'm hopeful they're of benefit to people.
Hmm. Yeah, the benefit to it, because I know you said before that you had a stuttering problem based off of some experiences and traumas. I
Hmm.
had the privilege of speaking to a buddy that became my friend when I was going through peer training or becoming a peer specialist, and he had an adverse childhood, and he learned to stutter so people would be able to see him, and it became this, but it was also very shameful in a lot of ways because he wasn't able to articulate. He had people that made fun of him, ridiculed him, and shunned him. But in his own way, he was not being seen by his own family, so he was started to be able to have this type of stutter.
Mm.
And one of the things that I noticed is when he self-soothed, just like we will self-soothe if say it was with alcohol or with sex or with other things, video games, name it, porn. When he self-soothed and like he was just rubbing his leg and he was talking, he was able to not stutter. And
Mm.
him and I, we got into this conversation of with he would take his big toe and shove it down into the floor in his shoe so nobody else can see it.
Hmm.
And it would keep him distracted enough that he would be able to articulate his thoughts. So when we're actually all struggling, we handle things differently. We see it from a different prism. So sharing what you have been through and also how you have taken it from lessons, the audience will hear it differently from you than they would from me or from a clinical psychologist to a social worker because of the way that we are re-looking at the prism. And sometimes we just need something to agitate us enough to be able to tweak the way that we are viewing the problem to a possible solution.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when I know you've been sober for about 4 years, you said 5 years, correct?
Hmm. Yeah. I mean, I'm sober from alcohol and street drugs. I mean, I've done psychedelics as medicine, and it's been very healing for me. And so I engage in that once or twice a year. But I don't have any addiction, which I would say is causing me any problems, or I don't, those kinds of things. So yeah, about 4 years. It'll be actually 4 years in July that I haven't had a drink in any of drugs like street drugs.
And being sober from street drugs or from alcohol, how has that been, or how was it for you when you actually removed it from your life? How was it for you trying to figure out who you were during that time?
Yeah, it also has been a total blessing. And I would say that my experience of it is that I was certainly trying to work on those things for the years before it. And I'd quit drinking for 18 months or 9 months. But at the end of the day, I felt like I was a drinker and I probably would go back and I was using willpower. And for me, that just didn't work. And so what happened is, as these changes started happening with my nervous system, I started to be able to drink or not drink without really much willpower. And one thing that was a really powerful thing for me was my men's group leader. As I was starting on this process, he told me, he said, "Look, don't try to stop drinking right now. But what I'd like you to do is know why you're drinking and make mindful choices of it. So when you come home tonight and you're having a glass of wine or whatever you're doing, take a couple breaths and like kind of tune into your body a little bit. He was starting to get me to feel my body, which I was very not trying to do.
Mm.
And then if you want to drink because it tastes good, drink because it tastes good. If you're drinking because you're avoiding, it's good to know that. And what I really realized is that I wasn't drinking because I like wine at dinner at night, and I wasn't drinking for the reasons that I thought I was. I was drinking because I had bodily sensations that were very challenging. And so as I've worked on those and I've oriented my mind where I say I'm just not a drinker. So it's not difficult for me anymore. I don't have any desire, man. I also don't do heroin. I don't do all kinds of things that aren't hard for me not to do. And I am engaged and in a 3-year relationship with somebody that doesn't drink. And I've gone through all the experiences that I thought I had to have a drink in Mexico, margarita, this or that. And really, I've enjoyed those experiences more because I've been more present for them. So even though, yeah, I used to go to Mexico and drink margaritas the whole time and think that was the only thing about it, what I realized was I was missing most of Mexico.
Hmm.
And so I don't miss it at all. My community is not a big drinker community, and what I think has just happened is um, people show up when you're putting out the vibe that you're putting out, and then you get more friends that don't drink, and then it's just not a thing. It is, I mean, I know it is difficult at the beginning when your whole social life has been wrapped up in it, and you think like, how could I have fun or this or that. But I think in some places, if you can trust in, that you're doing something good for yourself and that good things will start to happen. And, it might not be the first day, but people will start to show up and you'll be able to have a very full life. And I don't look back badly. I mean, my past was fun and all of that, and because of the hero's journey part, I don't look like down on myself for it, but I wouldn't go back there. I mean, even if I could, drink this amount and not get into it too much, which I probably could now, it just has no interest to me. That was what I was doing when I was in a different phase of my life, and now I'm doing what I'm doing now.
How has the medicine shaped your life?
It's been really powerful. So, we talked about, one of my experiences was sexual abuse, and getting into that terrain, it can be very scary, right? I mean, this man intentionally scared me. I mean, he told me he was going to kill me and kill my parents if I told anybody, and if I didn't keep coming back. And I'm 5 years old, so these things are deeply fearful for me. And so I was able to work with a highly trained therapist who understood both MDMA therapy, which is what we did for my sexual abuse, as well as sexual abuse. And I was able in those sessions to really forgive the perpetrator and forgive him. Forgiveness is for me, not so much for him, but it was a very important step, so I wasn't holding so much anger and bitterness. And the chemicals that are released with MDMA, it's all the love chemicals that you feel so good. It's kind of hard to be in a bad mood on it or feel scared and those things. So, and I was also able to see him in a way that said, my senses, these things happen to him. Now, I never perpetrated anything like that. I did violence on myself, but I did make a lot of mistakes, and I understood how a certain setup in your life can cause a lot of regrets. And I just oriented around that probably happened to him, and I am breaking the chain right now. And the medicine helps it to be. I think the other thing that it really does is you're in a state with heightened chemicals and brain things going on, and the things that you have realizations on, they really set in. They really feel like they're real and true. So when I forgave him, I've never had to go back and like redo that again. And that wasn't the only part of my, then I went to different kinds of therapies to kind of expel that guy out of my psyche, with hypnosis and whatnot. And so, and then on other ones, there's a lot of different medicines. I've had my experience with them is they bring out my inner wisdom for what's needed at the time of life that I'm taking them. So when I had my sexual abuse one, that was what was up for me at that time, and that was all of the thing. The next one after that that I did was psilocybin, magic mushrooms, and it didn't cover sexual abuse at all. It was much more about like, all right, what kind of man do you want to be? Like, have you ever really thought about who you are, what your journey is? Why are you here? How do you want to be a better father? How do you want to be a better partner to my fiance? And again, my experience with me personally, it's not for everybody, is you're under eye shades often, and
Mhm.
they're usually recording or writing notes, but I just narrate. This like wisdom part of me comes out and is like, Steve, this is what you got to do. See what you're doing. My daughter's Athena. See what you're doing with Athena. If you did it like this, it would be better. And because I think it's coming from what I kind of know and the way that the medicines work on you, I never have a doubt that that's the way that I want to go. And then I think what it also has been really helpful for is I don't have to be under the medicine to have that experience, because what I've learned is that voice, that wisdom voice that comes out so strong and loud and clear in the medicine is really my own intuition, which I have access to, and straight and all the time. It's not quite as loud and quite as declarative, but I've really learned that if I tap into myself, my body, my feelings, and listen to what comes up, just like what's the thought, just like a little thing, I just go towards it and I believe it. And for me, that's been freedom, because I operated under so many shoulds, how I should be, I should do this, I should do that, um, that I was crafting a life based on other people's expectations of me, and I was falling down on them a lot, honestly. And now, my wisdom doesn't tell me to do anything that's I've yet to find to be like bad for me or whatever. So now that's what I'm more orienting towards, being the best version of myself, and knowing from experience with that, when I'm a better version of myself, good things happen for the people around me.
I love that for you. It's I did a psilocybin retreat before. I'm looking forward to doing an Ibogaine retreat one soon, and I would love to do MDMA for self love. The what you were just talking about, the when you're underneath the influence of the plant medicine, it really helps us start to change up our own self narrative, because we can see the patterns that we are creating. We want them to change, but then it actually allows us to realize that we have the opportunity or ability to change. So I appreciate you sharing all that. And
Yeah, and let me just bring one thing about that. So not only what they do is they give you these realizations and what that not, but they create what they call the critical period afterwards, where
mhm,
your brain is tuned to change and shift its neural patterns up. So, and you talked about ibogaine. Ibogaine is the most powerful is psychedelic in this way, and the critical period afterwards lasts months. And so what's really good about that is for several things. One, if you're a drug addict, ibogaine will reset your dopamine receptors and whatnot, so that when you're trying to change, you're not under this gloom of like not having any light in your life, right? And that's why relapse rates are like 90% for people like that. And then you also have this period of time when your brain is ready to change. And if you're doing it well, you're doing things intentionally to do that. And I'll shout out my own podcast for this a little bit. My partner did Ibogaine, and we did a series on her. She's a very prominent person in the world of psychedelics. She had extreme childhood trauma. She never disclosed that. She got vulnerable and told her story before the Ibogaine journey. We scanned her brain before it, and it had all the hallmarks of a brain with trauma. Flew down to Mexico, went to the Beyond Clinic. I interviewed those founders. We came right back home and we scanned her brain again just to see the change directly from the medicine. And then 3 months later, after doing neurofeedback and intentionally trying to execute some of the behavior changes that she wanted, we scanned her brain a third time. And it was amazing. Remember, I told you I did 40 sessions of neurofeedback. In one Ibogaine session, she made more progress than I did in months and months and months. Her brain looked almost like the perfect brain. And it was interesting because she felt a little disconcerted with that because of hypervigilance, she was always a very high processor and fast thinker. And she thought, man, am I losing my edge a little bit? I don't think I'm quite as snappy as I was. And then she continued to do the work after. And when we did the third brain scan, what had happened is her brain moved back a little towards how she was. So she didn't feel like she lost anything, but she just wasn't having the negative repercussions of those things. So I think when you're doing the psychedelics, you really have to orient around the experience is very powerful, but you can become a drug addict. I mean, all the thing, I mean, unless you make behavior changes when your brain is ready for it, you're not going to get much out of it. And you can meet people now, because I'm in that world, you meet people who go all the time and you can tell it's clear that they're not getting the full benefit, right? Because you have to do all these things that we're talking about involve some action and effort and energy on your part. And so, yeah, it's been those medicines for so many people that I know. You know, I'm not the kind of person that's saying everybody should do psychedelics. I think if your wisdom comes up a little bit and you're drawn to it, it's probably a good thing. It's also really important to know that you're dealing with somebody who has some experience with it and can deal with something that might come up, because you don't know what's buried. You don't know what's going to come up. And there's, because of the popularity of it now, you have a lot of very good intentioned people that don't have a lot of experience. In traditional cultures, right, you apprentice for 7, 10, 15 years before you lead somebody. And now people can get a course on the internet. There are many people who've been doing this work for decades, and they're findable. And you know, honestly, I can help with that if anyone wants to send me a DM. And you know, they're legal in Colorado, where I am right now. The state of Colorado, psilocybin is legal. You can come here and work with an experienced practitioner and do it in a legal setting, which is nice. So yeah, I think they're a very powerful tool. Like any powerful tool, if it's a gun, you need to know the safety measures of it before you get, you know, the negative effects of it. But within that context, if somebody's thinking about it, my sense is that that's their inner wisdom starting to say, maybe this is good for me, and explore it more and see how that feels.
So I appreciate that you'd be willing to take the M. So one of the questions I would have, and we will do it now, is where could people find you and how could they get in touch with you?
So my podcast is called The Neuros Journey, Neuros. It's like the hero's journey through your own mind. And it's on all the podcast things. I mean, the best place for a DM is probably YouTube, or I have some shorts on Instagram. And yeah, this is what I want. I want to be helpful. I don't know the popularity of your podcast. If 1,000 people DM me, it might be hard for me to deal with that. But at the level that I'm at, I get a few a week, and I tend to be able to be helpful. And specifically for information on Ibogaine, that's a different kind of thing. You don't want to do that just out with somebody. There's medical issues. The social media feed of the Clinic Beyond, which is spelled BEOND, has a ton of stories of people that have been there. It's got a lot of the science. You can get really educated on Ibogaine there. And through that, you'll also get education on other types of psychedelics.
Man, that's awesome, dude. And I appreciate you actually doing that and getting this information out there, because the medicine world is definitely blowing up, and it's people are finding it to be extremely beneficial. And like you said before, is that it's hard for how would I say? It's hard if people just keep going back to the medicine without actually being able to do the work and the healing part and actually changing the behaviors. So, talking about the Neuro's journey, what is your big message that you try to give, and how does that intertwine through your story that you provide on your podcast?
It's an interesting thing because I've been orienting around doing this for a little over a year. And the Neuro's journey is my journey, right? So it's shifting as I shift. And so I have a lot of people that we talk about trauma and different kinds of experiences with it. Psychedelics. There's quite a lot of people who have different experiences on the podcast. Um, Working on, talking about a framework of an approach to this process. And so what I felt for me was I was just sort of doing things that came around me without much, and then I would get so attached to that thing was going to solve all my problems, and then it wouldn't invariably. And then because I was looking at it like this thing was going to solve my problems, then it would derail me for months because I got kind of depressed when that thing didn't work. And what I really like to talk about and work with people on is, if you're in a framework where you're saying, this is how I'm operating over time, and there is not an end goal, you're going to continue to evolve and change, and that'll be good for you. Things that seem like a loss are actually just part of that process. So basically, from all the way from healing trauma, that journey, and just what is more emergent for me right now, for me personally, is just what kind of man I am.
Hmm.
Like the trauma thing is something I continue to do my thing on, but I've been freed up. So much energy has been freed up from this process that I was just dealing with these sensations, that it's like, oh my God, I have all of this too. And so I'm really orienting towards, like, what is my purpose? How do I write that down and like have it guide me? How does it guide my actions? We were talking about the power of I'm sorry before. And I think for me, I had difficulty saying I was sorry because it was like an attack on my person for some reason. And once I started to say, well, this is the kind of man I am, this is what I'm trying to do, if I fell down on that, I could tell my kid or my partner or my employee, like, look, this is how I want to be. And yesterday I wasn't that. So I'm sorry. And it didn't feel like a threat to me because it felt like more like I was building that muscle. But what I got was the incredible shift in the way people react to me. I mean,
Hmm.
everything in my life relationally with people, from the person at Starbucks to my children and my fiance, is immeasurably better from doing this. And I really wish that for anybody if they're not feeling that from all their relationships. I wish it for them, and I also know that it can happen.
I appreciate you sharing all that, and we're about at the time right now, and I was wondering what is a message that you would like to give to the audience? And I wanted to actually share with you. I appreciate your story, the healing, the journey that you've been on, the continuous of not only doing talk therapy, but looking at neurofeedback, but also looking at plant medication, medicine, and the how where one thing might have actually not been able to be successful, but the continuing strive of resilience to be able to get there closer. So,
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, and I would say if I'm wrapping up, in some of the things that are really important to me is if you have the experience like I did, that you feel damaged, that there is something just not right with you, it's very highly likely that that was an adaptation your brain made at a time that it needed to, and that was probably smart for you then. And those things are not you. You can shift behavior patterns. If you have a compulsive attitude towards alcohol, you can one day not have that. If you can't manage, if you have the same fight with your wife every month, you can eventually not have that fight. And you're worthy of it, and it can happen. And there is an approach that you can take that will bring, at least for me, bring so much meaning to your life. And that everything that happened that you might beat yourself up for what you've done or for what happened to you, can all of a sudden be assets. And it is a life-changing experience, and I am so thankful that, and I'm still on it, and I will be on it forever, but I'm so thankful for where I'm at, and I'm thankful that I have something to offer some people who are maybe less far down the path. And if you're interested in following me and all that, there'll be more of this to come. And yeah, I really appreciate the conversation, Will, the way that you um, just your calm demeanor and your wisdom in these things. I think for people coming on, it can be kind of nerve wracking or nervous, and you put me at ease and in your way of being. So really appreciate you having me on. And I'm hopeful and very optimistic that our conversation will land for somebody who just needs it right now.
I appreciate that. And Steve, I agree, and I always find it to be a pleasure to listen to people's stories, the ones that they decide to share with me, and honestly, being able to be open and vulnerable in front of whoever is listening. So, thank you so much, Steve.
Thank you so much. Take it easy.